So, beyond this, I welcome you to our first featured panel. We are very happy to have this one. We've been thinking about it for a long time. We really wanted to create space where we center Romani knowers and scholars and activists. So we're very happy that we are able to do this. I'm Tereza Hendl. I'm one of the Ruta founders and a board member, and it is really my honor to also be trusted with moderating this discussion. This is a panel that wants to reflect on the fact that Ruta regions have difficult pasts with respect to the injustice and discrimination done toward the Romani people, from the histories of anti-Roma slavery that existed in our regions, across contributions to the Nazi-German Holocaust against the Sinti and Roma across our regions, to the systemic practice of forced sterilization of Romani women. This is something very close to home because I come from the Czech Republic, and we had a very troubling long history of coercively and forcibly sterilizing Romani women under state organized socialism. And sadly, that practice also outlived state socialism quite a bit. The last case that was recorded in the Czech Republic was 2012. So that's a very recent practice. It's really something that needs to be accounted for. And reparations now are also bureaucratically very problematic. And the money that is offered to women who were victimized is not really dignifying. So it's really troubling on so many levels. And a lot of us hope that some justice can be done, but what is justice when you are deprived of having children, which no one can fix anyway? So we just hope that this will never happen, ever again. And then we need to think about the long ongoing forms of discrimination on the job market and access to housing and education. Many Ruta societies have much to account for and grapple with, basically. And just like anywhere around the world where there are already pre-existing inequalities, these get always magnified in the context of war and displacement. This means that where there was already difficult access to housing and education in communities that have faced racial injustice, this will get even harder in the context of forced migration. And rarely our societies that receive refugees will have readily functioning mechanisms in place to alleviate the disproportionately difficult situation of already vulnerable groups. And this way, the levels of exclusion and socioeconomic hardship can magnify really badly, really fast. And this is what we want to particularly focus on with this panel, the situation of Ukrainian Roma in the context of the Russian invasion of Ukraine and in the debates on post-war reconstruction, and ask what are the issues that need to be addressed, but also foreseen in advance so that more harm can be proactively avoided rather than made and then needing to be addressed with much more difficulty. So now we are honored to have with us a group of speakers who are very active and knowledgeable on the concerns of Romani communities and their well-being. And we have experts from the NGO sector all the way to the Council of Europe, covering a lot of different aspects of these concerns, including EU-level policy. So let me introduce these amazing speakers. We have here Volodymyr Yakovenko, who is a public figure of Roma origin, born in the Dnipro region of Ukraine. He holds 2 higher education degrees in law and economics, which allow him to effectively combine legal expertise with an understanding of socioeconomic processes. He served as the coordinator of the working group of the implementation of the Roma Strategy 2020 under the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, where he actively promoted Roma integration and human rights protection. He is also a co-founder of the Roma youth organization Youth Agency for the Advocacy of Roma Culture, ARCA, which focuses on youth development and cultural preservation. So we're very happy to have you here. Then we have Zola Kondur, who is online. She had other commitments, so she couldn't make it, but she is with us. She has been a lifelong human rights advocate. In response to a serious inequality of Roma women, Zola helped to found and develop the international charitable organization Roma Women Fund Circly, which established the Roma women's movement in Ukraine. How amazing is that? From 2019, Zola Kondur is a tolerance ambassador of UNDP Ukraine. Her human rights advocacy and passion for Roma issues has led to work with government institutions and international human rights organizations, including her current role at the Council of Europe as a project manager for national minorities, Roma and anti-discrimination projects. And then we have another participant who couldn't make it all the way here but is online with us, Stephan Müller. He is here in the position of an ally, just like me. And I must say, he came with such amazing recommendation that he must really have done a lot of good work. So we're really glad to have him with us because it's also, we can learn a lot from good allyship too. And he is a political scientist working as an advisor on international affairs for the Central Council of German Sinti and Roma. He has more than 30 years experience working with vulnerable communities, in particular with Roma in Southeast and Central Europe. Before joining the Central Council, he worked as an advisor to inclusion policies for vulnerable groups for several governments and international organizations. Then we have apology from Elżbieta Mirga-Wójtowicz, who really wanted to be here, but she has a health concern, so Tatiana Storoshko stepped in. She is a Roma activist, researcher, and educator from Ukraine. Over the course of more than 16 years working on Roma issues, Tatiana has engaged with their various aspects through historical and cultural studies, teaching, awareness raising, activism, and human rights advocacy. She is a fellow of the UN Minorities' Rights Fellowship Program and a head of the non-governmental organization TENET, Center for Social Transformations. Tatiana is also a researcher within the international project ROCIT, Roma, Unequal Citizenship and Displacement in Wartime Ukraine, and there are some other scholars from ROCIT, so she has a fan base right there, so that's also great to have you. And so this is from us with the introductions, and now I wanted to ask all of you basically in this discussion, what are now some of the major issues and concerns that you see from your sort of corners of your work that Romani communities are facing right now?
Thank you for nice introduction. If say in general, Roma in the face have the same problem as other Ukrainian citizens, but to solve this problem for the Roma community in different reasons, to more difficult as to the other people. One of the problem in which our organization see now, it's also marginalization of Roma because of the war. The other problems that not just Roma, but the other minorities, because when we raise the question, we not speak only about the Roma, we speak about all minorities, ethnic minorities, religious minorities, sexual minorities, who are staying in Ukraine. So their needs and their problems doesn't include it in the process of reconstruction in Ukraine, what would be after war. But the preparing for this should be started now. The others problem what we see now, it's also the problems with the education for the Roma. This problem was before the war, but now few different donors who supported education of Roma here in Ukraine, they relieve or they closed the programs for the supporting Roma students before the war. So, and now we see that regret process when what we achieve in 20 years, that we have like educated Roma generation, now because of the war and because of these donors, they close program or they leave Ukraine, we see that we lose generation of the youth Roma, who in the future can be also the activists and who in the future can support other Roma. So it's like main problems what we see now. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Now, if we can have Zola.
Good morning, everyone. Congratulations with the conference. It's a big honor to be with you today. Answering your question, I would like to say that the Council of Europe was the one among international organizations to start consultation meetings in 2022 after the invasion, to listen the voices and the needs and the problems of the Roma representatives from all over Ukraine. I remember our first consultation when people were connecting from the bomb shelters or having severe issues with the electricity and etc. So this type of consultations helped us to collect the information about the situation of Roma communities and then to pass it to the institutions, but also donors organizations, because the Council of Europe is not a donor organization. So what we have learned during these consultations and how the war influenced the vulnerable situation of the Roma communities. The first issue was the passports, of course, because those people who didn't have ID documents, they were not able in 2022 to cross the borders and seek the evacuation or to find, let's say, security conditions. Also, those who became internally displaced people without documents, they were not able to register as internally displaced people and then to access humanitarian support or to rent some houses. And speaking about housing in general, since the invasion, we can see that those Roma people who didn't have documents for their properties, they're not able to register the damage, for example, of those properties and to seek for compensation. But also with the, let's say, social housing, it's a general issue, I would say, in Ukraine. It's not so easily affordable for many IDPs in Ukraine in general, but when we are speaking about Roma, then we had cases when Roma people were not accepted into some shelters, and that's why Roma organizations established their own shelters for Roma women and children, but absolutely accepting all people who are in need of shelter. And the issue with the employment, I would say that for many Roma people, even before the invasion, it was very difficult to have stable incomes, and some people never had enough money even to save anything for the next, for example, few days. With the invasion, even those who had stable incomes lost their businesses. So for Roma IDPs or those who lost everything and moved to European Union countries, it was very difficult to start new businesses or to find possibility to earn money and to feed their families. So these are the main issues and problems that we have collected from the Roma NGOs during our consultation meetings, and I think that maybe our next speakers would add to this, but later I would like also to speak about how the government tried to address these issues. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Zola. If we can have Stephan.
First, thank you very much for the invitation. And I would like to apologize that I, on a short notice, couldn't make it, but I got, unfortunately, also some health issues which prevented me from traveling. Now to the topic. When we talk about Roma, what are the most pressing issues? I think we have to differentiate. On the one hand, we have the Roma who are living in Ukraine still, including the IDPs, the internally displaced persons. And on the other hand, we have the Romani refugees. The European Union assesses that roughly 100,000 Roma could have left the country, primarily to European Union member states, but also to Moldova. This would reflect, let's say, roughly around a quarter of the Roma population who is currently as refugees outside of the country. So we have what we really to look into both. I will try to highlight what I see as the most pressing issues for them. First, I would like to say, as Boba stated already, so the Roma face the same situation as every other Ukrainian citizen. But due to the vulnerability of them, it might be even worse, or in many cases, the situation is even worse. A similar assessment we could draw to when it comes to the refugees. On the one hand, the refugees enjoy the same assistance and support as any other refugees from Ukraine. But on the other hand, we also had a lot of discrimination. And I'm working in Germany, I'm German, we had them in Germany, but we had them all over the European Union. From all countries where we have reports from, we know that there was a strong discrimination of Roma refugees. What would be necessary? When we think about the refugees now in Western Europe, we should see this also as an opportunity. We have no comprehensive studies, but there are studies for Czech Republic, there are studies for Hungary, which demonstrate the very low level of education and of professional vocational training among the Romani refugees. So we should see this as an opportunity to train and to help the people. Not helping in the sense of a savior, but having them to be in the position to make their own living as refugees in Germany or in Western Europe, but also when we think about return. This kind of training programs, starting with language programs, would be necessary for a better integration in the current host countries they live in. But also, this is not cynical, as a better preparation for a potential return to Ukraine. The better they're trained, the better the chances they have on the labor market upon return. What we see in many European countries, and I can talk in particular about Germany, is a tightening of the situation when it comes to Romani refugees. There are more and more tries to get rid of them. And when you talk with the migration experts, what you will hear, the first persons to be returned will be persons who didn't learn the language of the host countries and do not have professional qualifications. And then again, we can say that the vast majority of the Roma fits into this category. So it would not be on paper an anti-Ziganistic or a racist approach of the host countries to send back these kind of refugees. They would just say we send back the ones who are not qualified and not integrated in our host society. And this refers, unfortunately, to a large part of the Roma community. So we can at least anticipate that many of them will be returned and will be among the first returnees. Another really pressing issue is the issue of dual citizenship. This refers to primarily to Roma around the Uzhhorod area, so around in Transcarpathia area. Many of them have dual citizenship, but what we see in Germany, and we had this 2-3 years ago in Czech Republic, we have similar approaches in Switzerland and in Austria, that the authorities are using the potential or the possible dual citizenship of Roma to check Roma. So what we have in Germany, for example, is that Roma are people being perceived as Roma. They do not have a label, I'm a Roma, I'm a Romani. But people who are being perceived as Roma based on prejudices, like they're coming in big families, they wear certain clothes, etc. These people have to be checked. or people who speak Hungarian have to be checked if they have a dual citizenship. And what happens then in Germany is that people under scrutiny do not receive any assistance. So that means their data are being sent to the Hungarian authorities, and for the duration of this process, they neither have the right for accommodation nor to financial assistance. This is combined with a very, very strong media campaign. You can also say a hate speech campaign against Roma. So what happened is last year, from January till May 24, we could get the data on the people who were allegedly had dual citizenship. We had a media campaign in Germany saying 5,800 Ukrainian refugees or bogus refugees, they only came to abuse our social system, etc. Then it turned out of this 5,800 people who allegedly have a dual citizenship, only 7%, 414 had really a dual citizenship. But this means, on the other hand, that 4,500 people who were eligible to assistance and to be included in the temporary protection system in Germany were not included, only because they are Roma. Similar, we have in Hungary, we have similar mechanisms in place which try to get rid of Roma who are from Transcarpathia area. And we also see this in other countries. Czech Republic tried this exactly the same what Germany was doing already in 2023, if I remember well. And there was a similar result. Then it was 4% of the people who were Czech, and only Roma were Czech, who had a dual citizenship. So these are, let's say, exclusion from targeted programs, and this dual citizenship is among the refugees at the current situation, I would say, the most pressing issues. What the future will bring, I'm afraid that Roma will be among the first to be returned in case we have a kind of a ceasefire in Ukraine. Very briefly to Roma in Ukraine, I guess I'll run over my time, but Zola, Tetjana, and Vova know everything much better than I do. But I think what is really necessary at the moment, what are the most pressing issues, is the recognition of Roma as an integral part of Ukraine, that society and politics understand Roma are a part of us. If Roma can die in defending the Ukraine, then I think when they defend Ukraine, they have the right to be accepted as an equal member of the society. And this process is a little bit missing. We have on the political side certain steps, but as much as I can see, overall in the society and overall in the political sphere, also at the international level, this is relatively forgotten. What is also important is to continue with this fight against anti-Gypsyism. I know Ukraine is in a war, but we still have to get this on the agenda and say, yes, we have anti-Gypsyism also in Ukraine, as in every other country in Europe, and we have to fight against it. Vova mentioned already, the other really important thing is, and I could come back to this also later, is the inclusion in the recovery process, whatever sector we are talking about. Education, employment, housing, infrastructure development, this all affects Romani communities across Ukraine. And if we do not include them now into the planning of the Ukraine recovery process, they will be excluded when it comes to the implementation. We only have to look what happened in Kosovo, what happened in Bosnia, Herzegovina, or what happened even in Syria and Iraq to Roma-related groups. They were excluded. And this is one thing what we really have to avoid and where we have to work on now, which is not easy, but we made certain progress, I think. What we also have to think about recovery process is not only a physical recovery process, it's a mental recovery process. And also there we have to think about how the Ukraine society deals with the situation of Roma, deals with their own Roma community.
Thank you so much.
And then I would stop because I guess I overrun anyhow. Thank you.
We will come back to this, but you're raising really important and concerning issues. But that,
Thank you, Tereza. And first of all, I would like to thank for the opportunity of being here. And for me personally, it's even more important and encouraging to be on this panel among the friends and supporters, individuals, and also representatives of institutions who've been by our side since the very first days of the full-scale invasion. And I can remember when we were totally shocked and lost. We were evacuating ourselves and we were jumping in and out from the bomb shelters, and our colleagues from Central Council, they were staying and waiting on Zoom calls and saying, just take care of your safety now and we will be here for you. And this is what is giving hope and also understanding that there are people who are there for us and who are ready to support. And also being here and opening this amazing event by speaking about Romani voices, it's also incredible case of support and giving also space for Roma communities. Speaking about the challenges which we can see while working on daily basis, I think that each of the speakers will be in one way or another echoing each other, because we are facing a lot of similar problems. But still, I would like to focus a little bit more on the issues of Roma young people, because I'm also representing, as had been mentioned, Roma youth organization, and what we can see, what we can observe now. Last year we had a study about the situation and the states of Roma youth movement, of Roma youth of Ukraine. And besides all other problems that young people stated, problems with housing, problems with access to education, job market, we also heard a lot about the feeling of disconnection, feeling of the absence of environments that could support young people and that could give them feeling and sense of belonging. A huge number of young Roma, same as other Ukrainians, they had to flee and to change the places where they are located in Ukraine or to move outside of Ukraine, and it broke so many connections, it broke so many structures that supported and that empowered young people. And what we also observe and we also hear from youngsters with whom we are working, it's huge problems and challenges which they are facing with emotional well-being and also psychological well-being, because they are not aware of where they can get this support. And even in Ukrainian culture, it's now getting better with attending psycho-support and getting the psycho-support, but it's not that normalized yet. It's not that popular and enough present in our lives. And we can see how it presses especially young people. And also speaking about the young people as representatives of youth movement, here we can also see a lot of struggles and problems, because a lot of activists, a lot of organizations since the beginning of full-scale invasion, they lost their capacities, they lost their means of living and working. Some organizations, they just stopped working, some had to split because of different reasons. And of course, you can see also new initiatives arising, but in these difficult, challenging times, these newly emerged organizations, they have to develop in very difficult circumstances, and they on daily basis have to think not only about how to sustain themselves, how to sustain their teams, but also on daily basis new organizations and activists, they have to prove that what they are doing, it's important, that they belong to this place and they deserve to obtain also these resources. Because topics they and we are working with, they are very important right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your important input. And now I want to ask, when we think about visions for the future, right, and imagination, what are some of the things when we think of the future that we need to be really aware of in terms of what we want to avoid, what we want to prevent, what we really need to keep on mind when preventing worse to come?
Thank you. So if to come back to that what I say in the beginning and also what colleagues mentioned, if you speak about the strategy for the recovering of Ukraine, and that ethnic minorities and other minorities doesn't involve in this process. It's because, as colleagues mentioned, that Ukrainian government didn't understand that Roma it's a part of Ukrainian society, and that they don't understand that Roma and other minorities should be involved in this process. Why they don't understand it? Because they doesn't understand also the perspective. For example, the Roma population in Ukraine and also in the Europe, it's the youngest population of youngest group what live in Ukraine. So around 60-70%, it's people around 35 years or younger. The other things that, as I told, so Ukrainian government doesn't understand the perspective. And all other example, so the birth rate here, we stay now with you in the Transcarpathia region, the birth rate statistic before the war show that only Roma community make positive effect in the birth rate statistic, because the other people who live here in the Transcarpathia region, they or live or unfortunately they die. So it means that government should to put attention to the Roma and other minorities. The other things, and it's our fear, what we see now and what can happen after the war. That now, before the war, we have like some radical right people who make napady, to допоможе з перекладу. Attacks, yes, attacks to the Roma, to the Roma settlements. And after the war started, these people, they became part of the army, and now they are on the front line. As the Roma. Roma also participate in the protection of Ukraine. And some of our fear that the first thing what we will have after the war, it's election. And these people who are right radical, who will come back from the front line, for sure, some of them, they put their candidature to the election, and they will be accepted to the government on different level, or local level, or Верховна Rada, Ukrainian Parliament, or some other ministries. And we know their position, and if we not start to accept Roma in the and not integrate Roma in the Ukrainian society, we will have, as Stephan mentioned, we will have the same situation as it was in the Balkans after that war what was there. So it's one of the fear what we have. Thanks.
Yeah, you're raising a really important point, because also if they can keep sort of campaigning also on division, right? And we see that all around Europe right now, how the far right is getting stronger. If you don't have some kind of counter strategy, this will get worse, right? And there needs to be some kind of plan to avoid that. And I am now a migrant academic in Germany, right? Where the far right just gained 20% of the votes in a federal election. So this is a really scary momentum for like a lot on when you also think about the history of the far right in Germany and how Russia also fuels all this and supports far right groups, right? So this is really something that all of us need to think of how to counteract and what to do to sort of fight back against the risk of the far right everywhere around Europe and further. We will later talk also about the US far right in the second panel. So can we please have Zola?
Yes, I would like to get to the point when our distinguished speakers said about the, let's say, human resources or the representatives of the NGOs who left Ukraine. We feel it almost every day because many Roma leaders, Roma mediators, and those NGOs that were very strong in the regions and cities left Ukraine. And there is a big gap now in this term of having strong partners in some of the cities and regions who would be like a bridge between Roma communities and local and regional authorities. Why it's important? Because when we are speaking about recovery, reconstruction of Ukraine, it's not only national level, it's also very much about local level and regional level and work with the municipalities and Roma communities, everyday work that that should be already started long ago, even not today. So I see the importance of training or raising new strong leaders or human rights activists among Roma representatives, and to build this strong dialogue and partnership between national, regional and local municipalities or institutions and Roma communities. Without this element, it will be very difficult to work on all the aspects of inclusion of Roma people into society. And then, of course, when we speak about the policy level and even inclusion, I see it as a strong connection with the effective policy implementation in Ukraine. For example, the Roma National Strategy, the Action Plan on National Minorities that was approved on 14th May this year is a very important part of the EU negotiation process of Ukraine. So without effective implementation of all these policies, all the mentioned issues will not be solved. But also it's important to increase the capacity not only of the Roma representatives and Roma NGOs, but also of the local institutions, municipalities, and national state institutions. And that can be about everything, about, let's say, inclusive approaches, sensitive communication, combating hate speech, and a very important aspect, of course, is what Volodymyr said about the far-right groups or radicalization, would say the very important step that is done by Minister of Internal Affairs 3 years ago was the draft law on criminalization of hate crimes in Ukraine through the amendment of the criminal law. So it's important to continue this work and to have a strong anti-discrimination legislation in Ukraine, and in this way to ensure protection of people, especially vulnerable or marginalized groups in Ukraine. So I would like also to speak about how the European Union accession process helps Ukraine to improve the legislation, but maybe I'll speak about that a bit later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stephan?
Thank you. The foundation for a better future is created today. We heard it now already from the colleagues also. That's why it is important that we advocate today that the Roma and the rights and the concerns are really reflected and respected when it comes to the recovery process of Ukraine, and when it comes to the planning of the recovery process. But I would like to emphasize also what Vova touched upon it already. It's the potential radicalization or strong violence in post-war settings. We do not know how the war will end in Ukraine. We do not know when, and we do not know how. Sorry, that's why I didn't travel. In general, war creates a situation in post-war settings where violence will be much more spread, where violence will be much more accepted, and where violence will be much less sanctioned. This is an experience you can look at every single war post-war situation in the world. Minorities and vulnerable communities will be among the first victims. What else do we have in a post-war setting? We will have a high level of corruption. Corruption will increase. Rule of law will be very weak. We might have a situation that regions or towns might be controlled by warlords or gangs. Discrimination at daily level will increase because we might have limited resources. It means when it comes to access to housing, when it comes to access to healthcare, when it access to labor market, etc., everywhere we might face discrimination, or we might see a situation where you have to know somebody who knows somebody, and then again in both situations we will have a situation where Roma will be more vulnerable than others. This kind of situation, this kind of scenario will affect the Roma who stayed in Ukraine. It will affect the Romani IDP, either inclusion in the current place of living or when it comes to return to the former place of living, and it will refer to the potential returnees. And again, this is really, I repeat myself, we have to lay the ground today to avoid such a scenario really develops into nightmare of Roma. It means also for return, for reconstruction everywhere, in particular when we take IDP as an example, when we are doing now housing assistance for IDP in the current host location, we have to think about how can Roma be included, are Roma included? How do we address the housing situation of the Romani IDP in their current host countries? How do we deal with the situation when it comes to return? Many Roma might not have the documents to prove the property of the house. They cannot get assistance, or we find different solutions. There are different solutions that they still can get assistance when they really can prove that they live there, even if the house is not registered in the cadastral records on them, on the name. I think what we have to do now, what is really important, again, to prepare the better future, the focus on the contribution of Roma in defending Ukraine. That's a very, very important asset, and it's a very, very important, I think, it might sound cynical, we could use for a better integration in a post-war society. What is necessary is a strong mechanism in place which not only monitors but also sanctions cases of anti-Gypsyism and discrimination of Roma. And I think we have a lot of things happening in Ukraine. I do not want to accuse the Ukrainian government, considering the war situation it is in. It is partly doing really an excellent job, not at least due to the support they have from organizations like Council of Europe or from individual countries. But this is really necessary, and as Zola already mentioned, we have to pay a specific focus on the local level. On the local level, we need strengthening of the Romani NGOs, of the Romani civil society, but also of the local authorities. And we have to have a mechanism in place which obliges international assistance to take at local level always a look, how is the situation of Roma? Are they included in the plannings of the local authorities? You can assume that it will not happen, but when you give the money, you can ensure the inclusion of Roma, but it has to be done, and the people have to be made aware of that. Two last things. The one thing is we have, as Vova already mentioned, a very large Romani population, a young Romani population, And if we would provide, and we, I say by purpose, meaning the international community plus Ukraine, we would provide opportunities to give them access to qualified jobs, not only to mean at jobs where they do not need any qualifications for, to really qualified jobs. This would help the Roma, this would help Ukraine. This would be a very, very important thing. But this, again, in a kind of a post-war situation where resources are scarce, it will be difficult to bring international donors to the point, yes, we have to work a lot with Roma. A last thing, I hope sometimes, that there will be after a war a kind of a monitoring mission, international monitoring mission in Ukraine. Whoever sets it up, UN Council of Europe, OSCE, European Union, because this would be a very, very important tool. I know the ones in Kosovo or Bosnia, for example, they did not always succeed in their ambitions, but this would be a very important tool, really to monitor and to see how is the situation of Roma in the post-war situation, and also to include then a kind of a sanction mechanism that we really sanction violence against Roma, and through this can probably also avoid violence against Roma. Thank you.
Thank you, giving us very concrete ideas on what to focus. So this is really vital. Tatiana.
Thank you. I can say that I agree with every point that had been said by the colleagues. And here I would like to touch few points. First of all, it's reintegration process. During these 3 years of full-scale invasion, we have already a lot of people who fled, but also those who returned to Ukraine, who returned to their home places, and of course we have Roma among those people. And there will be more and more once the war will over. And what we can already observe, and what I can say from the experience of my own family, returning back home, it's not always easy thing because of the diverse experiences which people in Ukraine are living through now, because of different access of the to the resources, different traumas and losses which people are experiencing. It creates extra tensions inside of the society. And when it comes to the groups that had been under pressure of discrimination for centuries and which are not seen in not always seen in the positive light, it creates even more tensions when they are coming back to their places. And what is very important to work already now on is to think of forms and programs creating reintegration programs, reintegration approaches, and also working on building up dialogues inside of our own society on different levels, from micro level to national level, because if we will not pay attention to it now, then even when the war will finish, we will have a lot of internal tensions inside of society, which will make it not easier for Roma communities as well. Another point I would like to touch here is concern about the situation in the informational space. Our organization runs a small digital media platform where we are working on the images of Roma communities of Ukraine and in Europe. And the concerns and observations what we have now, it's the more and more frequent repetition of the existing already stereotypes in the comment sections, but also the appearance of new narratives, new anti-Roma narratives, and there we can find very shocking sometimes, and sometimes also alarming narratives. For example, there are blaming Roma communities in the beginning of full-scale invasion. There are also verbal attacks on Roma who joined Ukrainian army and serving in the army protecting Ukraine. and many other speculations. If we will not also work in this direction, and if we will not amplify Roma voices in informational space, it can also go from digital area to the physical space, and this is not what we would like to happen. And here also, speaking about the Roma voices, I would like to emphasize the importance of collecting and documenting experiences and stories of Roma who are living through the war period. And I'm speaking also here from my experience working with the testimonies of Roma genocide survivors. It came to collecting their testimonies after decades of what happened to Roma communities during Second World War, and we could see how it influenced the communities. And now we have a generation which has this traumatic experience inherited by their parents and grandparents, which have also to deal with current situation, with current war. I'm privileged to be part of an international project which is documenting now the traces of Roma communities which had to flee because of the war. And this project was already mentioned here. It's Ruta, where we together with colleagues are collecting testimonies, collecting stories of Roma who had to leave their homes because of the war circumstances. And some stories which we hear during this process, they are not showing how the concept of citizenships very often is not working for Roma communities. It's also showing us that traumas that were not worked out before, they can influence on how current generation is seeing the life and environment right now. And very small example to finish with. Recently, together with colleagues, we've been interviewing one Roma woman, and she said that when it came to the choice where they want to evacuate, where they want to go from Ukraine, she had panic attacks, and she didn't want to go to Germany because of stories which she heard from her grandparents, what happened to their ancestors during Second World War. But then when she found herself in this country, and again she had to obtain medical assistance, she had another shock, and she was refusing medical assistance because she was afraid that she will be tested on. And this is something that people re-inherited and that we need also to deal with. And I think that we have to learn from what was not done with the memories of Second World War, with memories of Roma genocide, and not to make the same mistakes now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and you're raising really important concerns of intergenerational trauma, so this is really vital for us also to be aware of. Now I have my last question for the panel, and hopefully if we can get sort of short answers, so then we can also make some space for questions. If you have them, start formulating them now so you can ask. So from my end, to also think about the future and something positive, maybe some cases of positive practice that we can look towards and know, that there's some model practice that we might want to support. Do you see any initiatives or cases of good practice that we can inform ourselves with also as allies to know what has worked and which approaches to follow? And perhaps you also see some scenarios that we really want to not follow because they have not worked. So this is the time.
Thank you. And firstly, I want to reflect what say my colleagues previously, and it's about. So my colleagues mentioned that we have in Ukraine different like Roma strategy, new law about the ethnic minorities, and other things. And also it's making because of the pressure EU, because we want to be part of EU delegation. Oh my God. European Union, and its integration process to the EU. And we, in this case, we take a lot of different laws for the supporting ethnic minorities, different minorities. But as told my teacher in university, that in Ukraine we have the best law in the world. And problems actually not in the law, problems in the implementation of this law. Because we have, like, as I told, Roma strategy and other things, and policy making in the capital, but implementate everything in the local level, in the cities. And if in this local government, local politics, they doesn't understand what does mean anti-Gypsyism, who are the Roma, what they want, what is their problems, they didn't implement any strategy, they didn't implement any law, and they didn't protect any minorities. So it's one of the problem in that people doesn't know who are the Roma and what is the problem, and the other it's in the implementation. And to not take a lot of time about the good experience, as I told in the beginning, that so one of the case what we are working it's at the education of the Roma, because young Roma, because we think that it's one of the way integrate and include Roma in the social processes what is going around. And we had good experience, actually also was in Ukraine. We had Roma Education Fund who supported Roma students who are, after they graduate, they become Roma activists. I one of the part of this community. And, but 3 years ago, this programs was closed in Ukraine. It's worked in the west of Europe, but it's closed for the east of Europe. And we now see the process when we regret. So we go into the past, in that time when this program was started. And if you, in few years, if we didn't do something like that program, we will come back in the situation of 20 years before. Thanks.
And that's really unfortunate, because it seems like this is the time when that program is needed the most, right? So this is really absurd. Pity. Okay, Zola.
Yes, well, about some positive examples, but maybe more even about the policy development during the last 2 years in Ukraine and the expert support that has been provided by the Council of Europe. I would like, of course, to speak
Recording
about...
stopped.
I would like to speak about the EU framework negotiation for Ukraine, under which Ukraine had to develop 2 roadmaps. One of them is a roadmap on Chapter 23.
Recording in progress.
Fundamentals, and the action plan on national minorities is part of this roadmap. Why this action plan is important? Because it helps to harmonize the Ukrainian legislation with the European standards in the field of anti-discrimination, combating hate speech, hate crimes based on ethnic grounds. It's also, of course, about expanding educational opportunities in national minority languages, establishing mechanisms to monitor hate speech, and conducting awareness campaigns and implementing different programs. And this action plan also seeks to strengthen the institutional capacity of the State Service of Ukraine on ethnopolitics and freedom of conscience, by increasing the involvement of community representatives in political decision making. So this action plan is already approved by the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine from 14th of May this year, and already should be kind of implemented. And the important also small part of this action plan related to Roma communities. And it has three priorities: ID registration for Roma people, access to education, and housing. So here, I think the important elements of this political, I would say, document, and of course, a lot depends on the effective implementation of the action plan and Roma national strategy and law on national minorities at local level as well. And that's why we put our efforts also to improve or increase capacities of the state institutions to implement this policy at local level, but also to include Roma people, Roma representatives in all the processes. I would like also to mention that recently, very recently, the law on multiple citizenship was approved in Ukraine. And that was done to help those Ukrainians who left Ukraine because of the full-scale invasion to come back to Ukraine if they already received a citizenship of other country. And this law allows people to keep dual citizenship without, for example, rejecting the Ukrainian one. And it was done exactly to help people to come back to Ukraine. Ukraine also established a Ministry of Unity, and this ministry works specifically on creating conditions for Ukrainian people to come back to Ukraine, but also to support those who are currently in the European countries through establishing different hubs, places for meetings, exchange of the information, looking for different job opportunities, or those who would like to come back to Ukraine would have an opportunity to come to these points, let's say, and inform that they would like to come back to Ukraine, and they should specify the city or the place where they would like to go back, and then ask for help with the employment, housing, and etc. This is the idea. How it will be implemented, of course, we do not know, but we hope that this will be helpful, including for national minorities, Roma, and other marginalized groups. Regarding the documentations of the war crimes, it's extremely important, and I'm very grateful that there are many different NGOs documenting this part, of course, the war crimes and others. So, like, for example, Tatiana just explained, these are very important evidence and facts that we will need in the nearest future. About the monitoring of the situation of Roma people and implementation of the policies, but also the protection of the rights of human rights in Ukraine, they are ongoing. Especially on Roma, there is current process by the European Commission. There is also a process that currently is already on the way of the Council of Europe. And maybe it's not very visible, not public, but these processes are going on. And I hope that some reports will be published. So we will read all the results of these monitoring processes, and very big attention, as you know, is given by the European Commission to the national minorities topic, but also that includes the Roma communities. And maybe just to add about the best practices to me, also I see the very big added value of having Roma mediators network in Ukraine. These people are very helpful, even since 2011, but also during the since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, where they were among those who were giving the hand to Roma people and still continue very effectively their work. And I hope that we will manage to have a bigger number of such mediators all over Ukraine. And also just to mention that, for example, in the action plan on national minorities, there is a measure that local authorities or regional administrations can also have advisors on national minorities and Roma issues, but not as a volunteers, but as a full-time job. So this is also very important. Maybe I will stop here. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Stephan.
Thank you. Now I really try to be brief. I think we have to, when we talk about good practices, best practices, we have, on the one hand, we might have the political level, and then we might have the civil society level. When we look at the political level, I'm not aware of any good practice of an overall general appropriate policy towards Roma in a post-war setting or in war settings. I'm really not aware of this. What we really have is we have in individual fields, in individual sectors, we have good practices. When it comes to education, employment, whatever, we can find individual. But what I really do not see is a good practice when it comes to an overall approach. Zola mentioned the accession process. Compared to previous accession processes, the situation of Roma is taken relatively serious at a very early stage by the Commission. The first progress report 24 explicitly highlighted the situation of Roma and the need to improve the situation and to fight also anti-Gypsyism, which was a good start. But we have to see how this paper turns into activities and actions at the end. And when I look at this international level at the moment at the relevance what Roma policies in general have, I'm not so optimistic. Sorry to play the devil's attorney throughout the whole session, but it is like this. The Roma situation is less and less relevant, and this we see also with regard to Ukraine. When you look at the Ukraine recovery conferences, there was strong ambition and support by international by countries to raise the topic of Roma in the Ukraine Recovery Conference, but it was the Ukraine government who refused to address this at a high level in an appropriate way. So I see a lot of documents, which is a good step, but we really have to see how it can continue. A few words to civil society. A very good example for me is Kosovo. It would be good to have somebody from Kosovo talk about it. Kosovo went through a war like Ukraine. We had more than 100,000 Roma being expelled after the war, when the war was over. But we had a few 10,000 who stayed, and what they managed in the meantime to build up, it's an incredible, thriving and vibrant civil society with a lot of successes, with a very, very strong voice. And I think this would be how they managed it. I think it was, on the one hand, was a solidarity among themselves. There were different groups, there were different organizations, but they understood that they have to cooperate and not to go against each other. What they could also find, they found allies outside of Kosovo, different government institutions who supported them, and with this outside assistance, they have been taken much more serious inside Kosovo. I think these are different kind of approaches where the Romani civil society from Ukraine should look in. I'm not the guy who should tell them what to do, but I think this would be very, very important. And what the Romani civil society also, I think, could learn from other countries in Ukraine. Zola mentioned the health mediators, or the mediators. The mediators is an incredibly good tool, but it's not enough. Yeah, you also need experts in the Roma community who could sit when there is a negotiation with the government at government level about economic policies, social policies. You have to have somebody in your own community who knows what to talk about. It's the same as with health policies, with anti-discrimination policy. You have individual persons, but you have to do, I think this has to be done much more professional, that you really establish a pool of experts who can deal at the same footing with the government representatives or with international representatives. When you develop the strategy and you have somebody sitting there who's an expert on economy, you can achieve much more than when you have somebody sitting there who doesn't know so much about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This gives us really good ideas. Also, it seems like one of the really important things that we could do is put more pressure on the kind of integration of Romani concerns into post-war reconstruction right here, right now. So, Tatiana.
Thank you. And if I will overtake time, just stop me. All of my colleagues who are present today at this panel, they have extensive experience on advocating on different levels, local, national, international. And I think that they will agree with me that good recipe of success of any advocacy campaign is also building horizontal networks of alliances which can amplify voices and can support very, very extensively. And this is what we are trying to do on a daily basis in our organization and also with our partners. It's building networks, coalitions, and alliances. And one of the examples which I would like to share with all of you, it's the coalition of Roma Youth Coalition, which we established last year with the support of Council of Europe. And for us, it's a new experience, also working together, cooperating with other Roma youth actors, Roma youth organizations, and individual activists and leaders. And what is, I think, different now, what we are trying to do is to cultivate the culture of mutual support and giving different experiences and expertises, but not bringing in this process competition. So it's more about the being helpful from where you are and what you know, what you can do. And here, when we are trying to combine our efforts with other partners, we are working a lot with young people, and we are preparing them, trying to fill this gap which was spoken about many times today, gap in new leaders, in new activists, and in the entire Roma youth movement. So we are trying to raise and form new Roma activists, combining our efforts. And of course, we are not working just with Roma organizations and Roma youth leaders, but also we are part of a few other coalitions and networks, one of which is Young Diversity Ambassadors Network, which is created by the pool of youth-oriented organizations. Each of these organizations has its own deeper expertise, but the common goal of the network of the coalition is preparing young people to be ambassadors of the future reconstruction of Ukraine, to be active citizens who are ready to raise their voices. And what is also helping us in doing these things and building alliances is our media work. And I mentioned today about the media platform which we are running, and next month we are starting a new project where we will be creating podcasts together with representatives of other minorities, of other communities, and we will be speaking and searching for touching points, what are the common challenges, but also what are the points where we can support each other and where we can be of use for each other. And maybe my last point also about the going out of the bubbles and building networks. It's related to my recent experience. In the end of last year, I had opportunity to be part of the study visit to Kyrgyzstan. I didn't know much about this country. I didn't I'm very sorry to say I'm historian, but I didn't know much about the history of this region. And I didn't know what to expect from this country. I was so excited and I was so surprised by seeing how many parallels we can find with the communities living in Central Asia, with obstacles and struggles which they have, and how much we can learn from these communities about fighting for the rights in such a difficult environment, about also celebrating the culture and heritage and making young people interested in this culture by exercising crafts and using the language of arts. For me, it was a huge inspiration. And my message maybe for today would be to go out of the bubbles and build networks and to learn from other communities. Thank you.
This is great sort of message because I feel like this is really what we're trying to do with Ruta, so hopefully we can foster this. All of us together, but also we have a few minutes left. Are there any burning questions?
Some of you touched in passing upon this question, but I'm really curious if you could talk more about the impact of mobilization on Roma communities, like whether the Ukrainian state views them as like a source for mobilization, and then when the men end up in the armed forces, how does it look for them, and how does it look back home, like how the communities change if many men are gone, or maybe they're not, I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you, that's a good question.
Yes. I can answer that. Actually, Roma, they are pro-Ukrainian, and in the beginning, everyone, I think, here heard the story about the stolen tank and other things. So I don't like the word stolen, but it's my dear shell. It's like this. Yeah, but a lot of Roma. They mobilizate, and they are part of the Ukrainian army, but not all of them say that they are Roma. Some of them hide their ethnicity, hide their roots for different reasons. Also about because of the some anti-Gypsyism or some root words in the site of the Roma. So that's why they hide their ethnicity. But not a lot of, so in Ukraine live around 500,000 Roma. And mostly it's women, children, and some number around 100,000 Roma. They leave Ukraine and they now have status of refugee. And they stay somewhere around Europe, but around 400,000 they stay in Ukraine, and some of them they are part of the Ukrainian army. Hopefully, I answered to your question.
I see that Zola really wants to add something to this.
Yes, thank you. Well, of course, as Volodymyr said, that Ukrainian Roma are part of this society and defending Ukraine in all possible means, including not only being on the front line, but also supporting like volunteers. We know many Roma NGOs, many Roma women, communities who are collecting money and donating them to different battalions.
Great, because the most relevant things were already said. Probably Vova, the person who asked the question, Vova was on the stage, the Volodymyr, he could give you links to some articles, because we made interviews with a couple of Roma soldiers about the motivation, why they went in the war, why they're fighting in the army, how their situation is. So please feel free. Vova, I hope that's fine. Please feel free to contact Vova if you want to have more information. Thank you.
So Tatiana can either add to this, or if there is any other burning question, we can... Yes. Can I have, again, some help with distribution of mic?
I also, small comment, the question of participation of Roma in defense is a two-way street. It's a game that different actors can play, and that's explicitly why right-wing can have a lot of legitimacy after the war, because unlike Roma or other marginalized communities, they are one of the most visible organized actors in defense. But my question would be, I think, I agree it's very important to include voices of a marginalized group and including Romas in the discussion about reconstruction. But I also wanted to ask whether a Roma community or your organization or you personally, I know if you have this kind of more concrete vision in the most burning questions for Roma people, for example, housing, right? So how should be housing provided? If you have any ideas, or if there is a discussion or space for discussion in Roma community in this realm. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we don't have the clear answer for solving the problem with the housing, but we can see the example what is working in the European Union, for example. One of the examples, it's like social housing. In Ukraine, only these years, I think, for the IDPs was made such kind of program what gives some money for the rent house for the, but it's only for the IDPs. In few years, hopefully, when the war stops, we will have the number of people who will come back to Ukraine and who, for this moment, lose their homes. Some homes stay on the occupied territory, some homes was destroyed, and where these people should live. So you asked the right question, but we don't have clear answer for this moment. So we need to look for the example how it's working in the European Union or some other countries.
Thank you so much. So I'm afraid that we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much.
Tereza, can I add very quickly about the housing? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. Very fast. Well, housing programs for IDPs people are not always accessible even for all IDPs. It's a big issue. But I would like to come back to the action plan on national minorities, which I mentioned already twice during this session, and it has also the part on housing. So effective implementation of this action plan, effective implementation of the Roma National Strategy and Roma Action Plan would bring changes into the housing situation of Roma people and Roma IDPs if they will be effectively implemented. I think we all should put efforts to capacitate this, to implement effectively these policies and to change the situation. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So that gives us also some thought at the end that there's so much policy that seems to be in theory and in sort of law, but the question always is the implementation, and that's also where us as allies should really put our weight behind, right? And that gives us really so much food for thought. Thank you all. Thanks to the speakers. This was really important.
Thanks for inviting me.